Okay. Are we ready? Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we are very, very disturbed by the things that we have seen and heard about, the viciousness of the Hamas and what they did to men, women, and children. It was horrifying, and we wonder why. What would lead to this? What is the reason behind this? Where are we at right now, according to your calendar? Please, we're seeking you and seeking you through your word to teach us, to help us know what we can know and be okay with what we don't know. Lead us now, we pray in Jesus' name. And we do pray for peace in Jerusalem. Amen. Okay, Israel is at war right now with the Hamas, so that brings a lot of questions. Is Israel in prophecy? Does this have something to do with the end times? Who is Hamas? What's going on in all of that? I am going to put my professor hat on right now, if that's okay. So when I teach at the university, I present things. I try not to get over emotional, though as you all know me, I can't help it sometimes. Okay, so, but we want to look at this, and I want to before we started, I want to talk about my thoughts on unity in truth. Okay, what do I mean by that? The Bible talks about how we need to be united as the church, right? It also talks about how important truth is, and sometimes those two things clash, unity in truth. In the areas that are absolutely essential, we simply have to embrace the truth, even if it brings division in the body of Christ. Okay, that's on the essential issues, like who is God, what is the gospel of Jesus Christ, those kinds of things, okay? But there are other things that Christians genuinely disagree on, specifically and especially what we call eschatology. That's the study of the end times, last things. Christians disagree on those issues, and it would seem to me that eschatology is not an essential truth. In other words, we can agree to disagree agreeably together and still even be in the same church if we disagree on end times stuff, okay? But in saying that, that doesn't mean that it's not important. The Bible talks a lot about end times. It brings out a lot about what the end is going to be like. How do we know if we're getting close? Those kinds of things. So it's not unimportant. It's just not important enough to divide over. Okay? Does that seem reasonable? Okay. Okay, but we want to talk about it, and we want to dig in, and we want to see, has God revealed some of these things? Is what's going on in this war right now, does this have something to do with these events that the Bible speaks of as far as the end times are concerned? Okay, so I also want to say that it does seem quite often that there are two groups on perhaps the fringes. One over here, end times don't matter at all. Okay, they are pan-millennialists. They believe it'll just all pan out in the end, okay? Over here, and they really don't care and so forth, you know. But then there's over here sometimes, perhaps due to misinformation and hype, they bring in fear and even division. If you don't agree with me on exactly every single point of doctrine concerning the end times, then I look down upon you. And I don't think that's helpful either. Okay, there are people on the radio and on the internet that sensationalize some of these things I can't blame them. It brings in more viewers and they make more money off of that. I'm not saying they're doing it for money or anything, but sometimes they can say things a little beyond what the scriptures say. Now, I embrace the Bible as my final authority, not any human being and not any human being's opinion about what this might be or that might be. Okay, so we're going to see what does the Bible actually say, and I encourage you to hold it like this rather than like this. We all might be surprised. Okay, so what is going on? I'm going to briefly give an overview of the situation from a biblical perspective, then we'll have a time for Q&A. I'm going to lightning speed rush through 30 minutes of everything the Bible says about the end times. I'm just kidding. Okay, we really are. I have to look at this from a 10,000-foot perspective, but specifically where Israel fits into all of this, okay? So we're going to look at this, then see how this fits, what can we say and not necessarily say about it, and then we'll give you some Q&A, okay? So first point. Who is Israel? God made an eternal covenant with Abraham. If you have a Bible, I want to start out in Genesis chapter 12. Genesis specifically, chapter 12, chapter 15, chapter 17, and chapter 22 are critically important for understanding what's going on right now, okay? So Genesis chapter 12, let's look at verses 1 through 7. It says, the Lord said to Abram, go from your land, your relatives, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse anyone who treats you with contempt, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. I want you to notice the several blessings that God is calling Abram, who becomes Abraham, and the blessing is that he will become a great nation. God will bless him. He will bless those who bless you and your nation, and curse those who treat you and your nation with contempt. So that becomes very, very important as far as this. How do we understand this blessing with Abraham? And then all people on earth will be blessed through you. Let me name two ways in which that has taken place. Number one, the Jewish people preserved the Hebrew scriptures. So we have what we call the Old Testament because of them. And so that's one huge blessing that we have from them. And then secondly, Jesus Christ, who came through them, the Son of David, is our Messiah and Lord and the promised Messiah that the Old Testament predicts. And so that preserving of the Jewish people to bring about those two blessings really truly has blessed all nations. All the peoples on earth are blessed through Abraham and his descendants. But then he goes on. Now look at verse 4. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife, Sarai, his nephew, Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, okay, that's where they're at right now. Typically we call it Israel. Some people call it Palestine. That area of land was at this time called Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the side of Shechem at the Oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring, I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. So there we see the promise is not just that he was going to bless him, but specifically that he was going to give him this land. Now, many, many other passages that we don't have time to look at bring out also that this was an eternal covenant, and that including the promise of the land was an eternal promise to Abraham and his descendants. Now, it also goes on to say that if they mess up, God can temporarily take the land from them, but will eventually honor this covenant that God is making with Abraham, including the aspect of the land. Chapter 15, which we can't read, but you go back and you read it. That's the actual solidifying of the covenant that God makes with Abraham, and also where he adds this wonderful promise that God will count faith as righteousness. Okay, so keep that in mind. Chapter 17 is where the sign of the covenant comes, and the sign of the covenant to Abraham was circumcision. Okay, chapter 22 was the test of Abraham, where God calls him and asks him to sacrifice his own son. He's almost about to. God stops him, and we see that that was actually a type of the ultimate sacrifice, where God would sacrifice his son and didn't stop, but allowed him to be killed on the cross. Okay, so that was a type pointing to that, but that was the test of Abraham. And you see that though Abraham wasn't perfect, he sinned. He did a couple instances where he was just pathetic, okay? But you can see he grew in his faith by this time, because faith does actually produce works. You're not saved by your works at all, but true faith eventually produces works, and that's what we see in Abraham, okay? Now, with that, we need to skip all the way to Romans chapter 11. Once again, I can't read it, but I want you, jot this down, go back and read it, because it presents a picture. Paul does. And the picture that he presents is an olive tree. Okay, now the olive tree, he says, represents God's people. God's people that we see are chosen by God, the Jewish people. Okay, so the olive tree represents God's people. He goes on and he says, some of the branches, that's the individuals, are broken off because of unbelief. That's the Jews who didn't receive Jesus as Messiah, broken off. Okay, but other branches, wild branches, are grafted in if they put their faith in Christ. That's Gentiles. That's how Gentiles become a part of the people of God. Now, we need to understand here from Romans 11, there is only one people of God. That was the mistake of early dispensationalism. Now, later dispensationalists have corrected that, and they've recognized, yes, that was a mistake. God does not have two peoples. He has one people of God, but he does, in that one people, interestingly enough, he calls specifically and makes a covenant with Abraham. The covenant with Abraham has an ethnic national component to it that includes the land, includes the circumcision, and includes the physical children of Abraham, and it has a spiritual component that where faith is counted as righteousness, and this is how Gentiles get grafted in to the one people of God. With that, we're going to see in just a moment that God's grand plan is to take even the physical people. Eventually, even though they've been broken off, many of them, because of their unbelief, they're going to get saved at the end and grafted back in. If you go back to that Romans 11, it specifically talks about how in the end, all Israel will be saved. Now, some think that means Israel is just the spiritual Israel, but the passage is crystal clear. It is not the spiritual Israel. It is the physical, national, ethnic Jewish people, because he says, let me just very quickly read in Romans 11. See, I hope you're writing it down and saying, wait, I got to ask this. Yeah, a million questions are coming from all this, right? Okay, but in this he says, Verse 28, regarding the gospel, they are enemies for your advantage, but regarding election, they are loved because of the patriarchs. So he's not talking about just the spiritual Israel that places the Gentiles. He is clearly talking here. They're enemies right now because they haven't placed their faith in Christ yet, but he's clearly speaking to ethnic, national Israel. So there's this one people that God has. Branches are broken off because of unbelief. By the way, even in the Old Testament, someone was a Jew physically. They could not be a Jew spiritually if their hearts weren't circumcised. They could be circumcised in the flesh, but not in their hearts, okay? So even under the Old Covenant, this was true. There's somehow God has this plan, this blessing, this covenant he's made with Abraham. And the covenant, by the way, according to Galatians 3, is an eternal covenant. That means it will always be true that God has this covenant. Okay, so first of all, what did I say? God made an eternal covenant with Abraham. Second, there is a two-stage program for Israel's return to their homeland. If you understand Israel, in 586 BC, the Babylonians destroyed the temple, kicked the Israelites out, and exiled them up to Babylon, and they were in exile for 70 years. Then God allowed them to go back home. They went back home, but they were never quite at home. They always felt like they were still exiles because they were always under some other group, okay? So they still longed for the Messiah to come. And then when the Messiah did come, most of them didn't receive the Messiah, so branches broken off, and God judged them. And in 70 AD, the Romans destroyed the temple and kicked the Jews out of their homeland. From 115 AD on, they weren't even allowed in their homeland. And the Jewish people were scattered again. They were scattered all over the world, and they traveled for 2,000 years everywhere. And everywhere they went, they were persecuted. They were killed. They were stolen from. With the culmination of the 6 million Jews slaughtered by Hitler. Okay, so we have this horrible scenario, which, by the way, should tell you something. God isn't finished with them yet, because can you name any other people group that experienced anything like that and yet are now back in their homeland since 1948? Many Christians think that's just a coincidence. If that's true, I have a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. Okay, there's my non-professor hat on. Okay, put the professor hat back on. Okay. There is a two-stage program for Israel's return to their homeland, since God did promise the land eternally would be theirs. In Ezekiel 37, once again, we can't read it, but you go back and you read this passage. It's fascinating. It's the dry bones passage. And there's clearly a two-stage thing that takes place. First, the bones come together, then God breathes his spirit into the bones and they come alive, right? I believe very strongly that represents the bones coming together is Israel getting back in their homeland. The breathing the spirit into them is them receiving Jesus Christ as their Messiah and being born again, being regrafted back into the olive tree and living in that land that God gave them, okay? That's the two stage. The first stage has already taken place, 1948. Second stage, for the most part, hasn't taken place. I will make a case in just a moment for why I believe the majority of that will take place during the tribulation period. Okay, I want to look up a couple more verses. So let's look at, if you have your Bibles, Hosea 3, verses 4 and 5. please be writing down your questions, because I know I'm probably opening up for a million questions, and that's because we're covering so many passages of Scripture so rapidly. Hosea 3, verses 4 and 5, it says this. It says, "For the Israelites must live many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, and without ephod or household idols. Afterward, the people of Israel will return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. They will come with awe to the Lord and to his goodness in the last days." That phrase, the last days, is very, very important. So Hosea is not referring to the Jewish people after the first exile going home, because this didn't happen. Yes, they got to go back home, but the other stuff didn't happen, and it wasn't in the last days. So this is referring to this second return. They're back in their homeland now, but somehow, and so they had this long period where they didn't have any sacrifices. Why don't they have sacrifices? Because there's no temple. That's where they have to offer their sacrifices. There's no temple in Jerusalem. Now they're back in Jerusalem, and I would say they're going to build a temple. Okay? But here we see they're actually going to receive Jesus as Savior, David their king. He's the son of David, and this is going to be, they're going to be in awe of the Lord and his goodness in the last days. Look at Isaiah 66, verses 7 and 8. Interestingly, here also, speaking of the end times, it says in verse 7, "Before Zion was in labor, she gave birth. Before she was in pain, she delivered a boy. Who has heard of such things? Who has seen such things? Can a land be born in one day, or a nation be delivered in an instant? Yet as soon as Zion was in labor, she gave birth to her sons." Israel was restored as a nation in one day, May 14th, 1948. June 7th, 1967, Jerusalem was established and taken in to their possession as well. But in one day, they were established nation. This we saw prophecy fulfilled in 1948. I say we, I wasn't alive. But, okay, yeah, probably most, yeah. Well, anyway, okay, so we see this. First, I said, God made an eternal covenant with Abraham. Second, there's a two-stage program for Israel's return to their homeland. And third, God promises the Jewish people will get saved during the Great Tribulation. They're going to get saved. Look at Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. Zechariah 12, verse 10. Once again, the context is the last days, the end of time. Chapter 14 describes that last battle, what we call the Battle of Armageddon. Zechariah 12:10 says, "Then I will pour out a spirit of grace and prayer on the house of David and the residents of Jerusalem." Who is he pouring out the spirit? A spirit of prayer on? House of David and the residents of Jerusalem, the Jewish people. This is a very clear way of saying the Jewish people. Don't think spiritually Gentiles or anything like that, okay? Clearly. "And they will look at me." Now watch this. "They will look at me whom they pierced. They will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and weep bitterly for him as one weeps for a firstborn." When God pours out a spirit of grace on his people in Jerusalem, in Israel, they're going to look at me. Now, God is talking. He says they're going to look at me whom they pierced. Who did they pierce? Jesus. A clear reference to the crucifixion. By the way, predicted before crucifixion was even invented. Evidence that God wrote this. Okay, "They will look upon me," God, because Jesus is God, as we learned this morning in the message, okay? "They look upon me," and notice they will mourn for him. It goes to the third person because of the Trinity, Okay, so it's fascinating. But the mourning we know is a legitimate repentance mourning, and we know that by skipping down to chapter 13, verse 1. On that day, a fountain will be opened for the house of David and for the residents of Jerusalem, there's that clear phrase, to wash away sin and impurity. They actually get saved. They get forgiven. This is when they're going to put their trust in Christ. Now, we know pretty much when that happens, at least for the majority of them, from Daniel 9, 24 through 27. So skip to there now, okay? Daniel 9. You need to understand Daniel. You need to understand Zechariah. You need to understand the book of Revelation, etc. Matthew 24, as all of these are put together, referring to the same events. In Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27, we don't have time to read the whole thing, but here we see God's plan, his agenda, his time. And he starts out in verse 24 speaking of 70 weeks. All scholars that I know of believe that he's referring to 70 weeks of years. So how many years is that? 490. There we go, 490, okay. 490 years. For God's grand plan, he says, about your people and your holy city. By the way, that's Jerusalem. Jerusalem's very central to all this, isn't it? Okay. To bring the rebellion to an end, to put a stop to sin, to atone for iniquity. That sounds like the death of Christ, right? To bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Sounds like to bring the very end as well. So the whole grand plan of God, 490 years. Then he goes on and he talks about how 69 of the 70 weeks will take place. It says, no one understand this, verse 25, from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until an anointed one, the ruler, will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's 69 weeks out of the 70 weeks, which is, if the 70 weeks was 490 years, the 69 weeks is 483 years, right? You doing your math? Because it's very important to do your math, because we know the decree recorded in Ezra chapter 7, verses 11 through 25, Artaxerxes decrees to Ezra to go back and restore and rebuild Jerusalem. And that was, we know, between right around 458, 457 BC. Okay, you do the math, it brings us right around 2627 AD, which is right when Jesus started his ministry. You think a coincidence? No. This is why at that time everybody was expecting Messiah to show up anytime, because they could do the math. He told us, he gave us this grand plan. Now here's the difficulty. There's still a week left, right? 7 years. And it appears from the context here that there's a gap between the 69th and the 70th week. You don't just go in 7 more years, because nothing happened 7 years after Jesus died on the cross, or after Jesus showed up, actually. Nothing happened, right? So that's not it. So there's this gap. In fact, verse 27, it says, he, I believe, referring to the Antichrist. Believe it or not, some Christians think that he is Jesus. That's a big difference. Antichrist, Jesus, okay? So go with me on the Antichrist here. He, the Antichrist, will make a firm covenant with many, I believe with the Jews and with the other nations, for 1 week. That's the week, right? The 7 years. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and offering, and the abomination of desolations will come, which is when we know from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, that the Antichrist will put up his throne in the temple, declaring himself to be God. That's the abomination of desolation, okay? So this 7-year period, Antichrist is going to make a peace agreement at the beginning, and then he's going to break it in the middle. And it seems that the Jewish people embrace it at the beginning, but recognize something's gone way wrong in the middle, which is probably when they get saved. Okay, so that's my thoughts there, okay? So if you look at Revelation 7 and Revelation 14, both of those passages speak of 144,000 Jews who get saved. Okay. Now, what's interesting, some Christians believe that that's figurative of everyone, and I understand how they could come to that, except it seems to me that he goes out of his way to describe them. So it seems to me the better understanding is these are actually Jewish people getting saved. Chapter 14 uses a really fascinating little phrase. It says, as the first fruits of the Jews, which means not just 144,000 Jews are going to get saved. That's not very many. Okay, the first fruits where eventually Romans 11 takes place, where all Israel gets saved. I believe at the very end. Okay, that's who I think Israel is. They're now back in their homeland, but for the most part not saved yet. So who is Hamas? Okay. Revelation chapter 12, when you read it, in my opinion, the best understanding of that is that the woman with the stars and all that represents Israel. And what we find from that is that Satan, the dragon, he hates, according to this, two groups of people. He hates the Jews and he hates the Christians. That's what we see today. They hate the Jews and they hate the Christians. So Hamas is just a part of all those people that hate the Jews. Now you have to wonder, why does everybody hate them so much? Now, yeah, they're not the best people at times. Neither are you. You cannot explain the absolute hatred of this one little group, because there are not very many of them. Okay? This one little group throughout the centuries. Why has everybody hated them so much? And my explanation is because of Satan. It's evidence that there really is a Satan. And if there really is a Satan, there really is a God. This is actually pretty good apologetics, okay? When you look at this, you can't explain why everybody would hate this one little group and how they somehow survived. You know, that was fascinating with the Jews. They never had a chip on their shoulder. They never played the victim card. Oh, poor us, everybody hates us. They always just strove and continued to flourish, which is probably why a lot of people hated them. Well, anyway, okay. So, history of Hamas specifically. Established in 1987, having origins in the Muslim Brotherhood movement that was active in the Gaza Strip. It's just a little strip down in the southwest corner of Israel. The Muslim Brotherhood was active since the 50s. During the 1990s and early 2000s, they conducted many suicide bombings and other attacks against Israel. In 2006, the Hamas, a political party, and the very militant terrorist group, defeated the Fatah, another group in that area, and of the Palestinians in general, in the Palestinian parliament, defeating Fatah in a series of violent attacks. They actually attacked other Muslims, okay? So they're attacking, in fact, in order to win, what they did was they attacked their opponents, the Fatah, throwing many of the members off of 20-story tall buildings. This is the group we're talking about, who, by getting rid of Fatah, by attacking them, now then they took control of Gaza, okay? And now they govern Gaza, the Gaza portion of the Palestinian territories. Israel and Egypt, by the way, which is a Muslim country, have imposed an economic blockade on Gaza, sealing their borders with the territory, because both of them see this group as a terrorist organization. They're not just nice people that are mad at the Jewish people for taking their land. They're mean, evil people that did actually do some horrible, horrible atrocities. And so Israel is simply defending itself right now. They got attacked. Their baby, they have babies that were decapitated. by the Hamas. This is how wicked and evil these people were. They even attack their own people and use their people as human shields. To try to make the Israelites, the Jewish people, look bad. Okay, so in 2008, they imposed rocket attacks against Israel, and then just recently they broke through, slaughtered many people, kidnapped a bunch of others. So who is Hamas? Hamas is a radical Shia Islam movement. Islam is made up of two major groups. There's a few other little small groups as well, but two major groups. The Sunni Muslims, which represent about 85% of all Muslims, and the Shia Muslims, which is about 10 to 15% of the Muslims, but by far the most radical of the Muslims, specifically and especially by Iran. Iran is Shia Muslim, so are the Palestinians. Okay, so these groups here, radical Shia Islam. The Quran, and by the way, to maybe give them some credit, the Shia Muslims seem to take the Quran more seriously than most Sunnis. Okay, now there were some radical Sunnis as well, so don't get me wrong. But they seem to take the Quran more seriously because the Quran does encourage faithful Muslims to attack the Jews specifically. Surah 9, 29 through 30, and 59, 1 and 2. They encourage them to make war against all unbelievers. Surah 9, 5, 73, and 123. And they're even called to behead the enemy. Surah 47, 3 and 4. They are promising paradise for all who take part in jihad, Surah 47, verse 4. And the context of that passage is clearly offensive warfare. So here we have this group going by their book, hating the Jews and attacking them. Okay? They're also, you could call them disgruntled Palestinians. Okay, they have rejected all proposals for any two-state solution and will only be satisfied with the entire annihilation of the Jews. The chant that they're all, even in our universities here in the United States, push them to the sea so that Palestine will be free. They want to kill all Jewish people. They will not be satisfied until all Jewish people are killed, annihilated. That is who Hamas is. Now, is this war that's taking place fulfilling prophecy? Well, in one sense, of course, yes. In the sense of God's enemies hating God's people and seeing that the end times culminate in this last battle that's at the end of the tribulation, culminating in that. But no, in the sense of any specific Bible prophecies, because the Bible doesn't say Hamas is going to attack Israel, and then therefore that's this, that's it. Now, some have suggested, well, is this the beginning of World War III, right? Well, actually, World War III is not found in the Bible either. It does speak of nations hating Israel. It does speak of the four horsemen and many people getting killed. Could that be World War III? Maybe. Fourth of the world gets annihilated, so maybe. Okay, but those four horsemen, that's in Revelation. That seems to be somewhere near the tribulation period. So some have suggested maybe this is Gog and Magog. Now I've heard this from several pastors in the on the radio and on I've been watching way too many videos and stuff like that. Okay, but Gog and Magog, which is predicted, Gog and Magog is only talked about in two places in the Bible: in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and Revelation 20 verses 7 through 10. I want you, Ezekiel 38 and 39 specifically says Gog and Magog will attack Israel when they are at peace and when they don't have walls. Does Israel have a wall right now? Yes, it does. So it can't be Gog and Magog, and I'll show you why it can't be. Look at Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10. Revelation chapter 20, the only other place that mentions Gog and Magog, 7 through 10. Verse 7, when the 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. When does the battle of Gog and Magog take place? The end of the millennium. So we have a 7-year period that's supposed to come. We don't know when it starts. The Antichrist is apparently going to bring some peace agreement. Then we'll know when the 7 years starts, okay? If you're a pre-tribulation rapturist, you won't know because you get zapped up to be with the Lord. If you're a post-tribulation rapturist, you miss out on the rapture. Bummer. I'm just kidding. No. I'm actually a post-tribulation rapturist, so apparently I'm going to stay. But anyway, we have this 7-year period, and at the end of the period, you have the Battle of Armageddon. Then this 1,000 years of Jesus' reign in Jerusalem, literally for 1,000 years. And according to this, at the end of the 1,000 years is Gog and Magog, right? So could Hamas attacking Jerusalem be Gog and Magog? It can't be if the Bible's correct. Okay, it can't be. So I think that's where people have gotten a little bit more sensationalized. They say maybe it is, because they also say, go back to Ezekiel 38. They also say that when it starts out, it says, word of the Lord came to me, son of man, face Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, prophesy against him. Okay? So who's Gog and Magog? Well, it says he's the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. Scholars are pretty sure Meshach and Tubal are actually up in the Turkey area. Okay, so who is this Gog? Well, some people have suggested the phrase chief prince, the idea of chief, they say that's the Hebrew word is Rosh. They say that's actually Russia. Rosh sounds like Russia. That is not very good Hebrew. Okay, Rosh is a very common word in the Old Testament. It means head. Cabeza. Rosh. Head, sometimes used as chief, has nothing to do with Russia. In fact, the Russian language wasn't developed until a long time later after that. So there's no way, there's no connection at all. That's sensationalizing it, okay? This is simply the chief prince. That's why most translations translate it properly. Chief prince, ESV, NIV, CSB, even the New American Standard translates it chief prince, not Rosh, not prince of Rosh here, okay? So Gog and Magog. Now there's an interesting part here because it does go on to say that he's going to gather a bunch of birds to eat them. Okay. Now he also says, and then there will be this long period of time where they have to pick up all of the parts from their warfare and burn them. Okay, and even find the dead people and put a little sign. It takes them several months to get all the dead people buried. Okay, that's in the Ezekiel part there. So that can't be now. It can't even be during the tribulation. Because during the tribulation, they're not going to be looking for body parts and burning. It's got to be. But that bird thing in Revelation 19, it does mention the bird thing. So some have suggested maybe it's at the end of the tribulation. It seems to me that it initially begins at the end of the tribulation, but is culminated at the end of the millennium. And that's probably the best way to understand Gog and Magog. But can you see that we could agree to disagree agreeably on those kinds of things? However, we can't think that this event has anything to do with Gog and Magog. It might have something to do with the end of the tribulation. Certainly has something to do with the end of the millennium, but doesn't have anything to do because they don't have walls. Go back and read Ezekiel 38 and 39. It specifically says they are a wall-less people in complete peace. Doesn't that sound like the millennium? It fits Revelation 20. Okay. But Matthew 24 tells us there will be wars and rumors of wars that are somehow an indication not just that bad things are always going to happen, but bad things are going to get worse and worse and worse to where we can know the seasons. Jesus told us very specifically, you can't know the day or hour, but you can know the times. Otherwise, cross out Matthew 24. It's meaningless. He was trying to give us evidence so that we could know we're getting close. It seems to me like we're getting close. I think this is a further step in that direction. Could this turn into World War III or something really bad? Well, Iran seems to be connecting with Russia, seems to be connecting with China, who are connecting with China. I could see it happening. But personally, I don't think so. I don't think we're there yet. I think Israel is going to go in. They're going to clean house. Those guys know what they're doing. They got my son, who was in the military, in the Marines. He lets me know that the United States is the second best at intelligence. Israel is first, okay? And they have by far the best trained military on the planet. They're going to go in, they're going to get rid of the Hamas to the best that they can. Nobody else, the Hezbollah are going to shoot a few bombs and then they're going to back off too because they don't want that to happen to them. I guarantee you Lebanon doesn't want another Lebanon war. So they're going to back off. So in my opinion, more than likely, within the next month or so, we're going to see a ground assault. We're going to see them go in, clean up. We're not going to see a world war. However, I could be wrong, couldn't I? I'm not a prophet, nor the son of a prophet. So this could. So watch. Please be aware of what's going on. But I want to say this about our response. What should be our response in all this? Number one, do not fear. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, God has not given us a spirit of fear. So if you have a spirit of fear, it did not come from God. If this has caused you to go, whoa, we need to bunker down, we need to do this, that, whatever, God has not called us to a spirit of fear. So we could look at many other passages. Isaiah 41, 8 through 10. Walk through the waters, walk on fire, whatever happens, God will be with me. Yeah, people, that's good news, right? So do not fear. Instead, Joshua 1:9, do not fear. Why? I will be with you, God promises, right? I mean, we should be excited. This might be the end. Woo-hoo-hoo! This could be it. This could be awesome, right? Yeah, it might be a little inconvenient. I don't get to drink as many lattes, but this could be awesome times. We could reach the lost for Jesus. I bet you, I guarantee you, if Satan starts doing stuff, God's going to do more. Don't you think he's going to bring back miracles when this happens? Of course he is. Miracles, healings, stuff that'll just blow everybody away. If we are in the end, wow. You don't have to fear though, right? So do not fear. Pray for peace. Psalm 122:6. Pray for peace in Jerusalem. We're called to pray for peace between these people. The Israelites, they don't want war. They just want to live in their land. Most of them are secular. Most of them don't know Jesus. Pray for peace. Pray for the Prince of Peace. I pray that a lot, that God would pour out a spirit of grace on his people, and that our eyes will open and they'll receive Jesus as Lord and Savior. By the way, it is happening as kind of like a birth pain. It is happening, okay? Pray for peace. Speak out against evil. We always speak out against evil. What Hamas has done is absolutely evil. I am dumbfounded how people can be marching in the streets, chanting pro-Palestinian stuff right after they slaughtered the Jews. It's evidence that there is a Satan. So pray for peace, speak out against evil, and look for the real signs. The Bible does give us signs. The birth pains in Matthew 24, the book of Revelation. As we read these things, study the Bible. These things are, they're general to where we can't predict dates. But they're specific enough, I believe, that we can even know within a generation. When we see all this stuff happening, I think we're in that last generation. You know how long a generation lasts according to the Bible? Not according to whoever. According to the Bible, it's 100 years. Specifically. He said to Abraham, God said to Abraham, he said, your people will be stuck in Egypt for 400 years. But in the fourth generation, they will come back. So how long is a generation? Do the math. If you do the math, it works out pretty well. Okay? Generation. 1948, this all started really happening, didn't it? So, maybe soon. But hold it like this, not like this. Do not fear. Be excited. Get excited. God has a plan for you specifically in the end times advancement of his kingdom. You could have a part in the greatest revival of all time. Matthew 24:14 says, and the whole world will hear the gospel, then the end will come. In Revelation 7, verse 9, it says, a great multitude that nobody can even count from every tribe and tongue and language and nation will be in heaven because they got killed during the tribulation period. Okay? So if you want to have an influence, start asking God, what's my part? Okay, wow, it's getting close. What's my part? And I would encourage you, if you really want to have an impact, come with us to Israel. You're thinking, you're still going to Israel? Not if the war's still going on. No, okay? If the war's still going on, we'll probably postpone it. But if I'm right, a month, it's done, peace comes back. That tends to be what happens in Israel if you just follow the history, which means it's going to be a little while. So we'll have this gap in between, and we'll get to go to Israel and maybe even see some Jewish people come to Christ and walk on the planet, on the places where Jesus was, and relive that. Okay, that's my spiel, which was longer than 30 minutes. When I timed it, it was 30 minutes. Huh. Sorry. Q&A. I know I said a lot, but questions and answers. Please come to the microphones because we want it taped. We want to be able to, everybody wants to hear what you're asking. So don't ask in the audience, come up to the microphone and I will do my best to answer or address your questions. And you can line up too if you want to.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for where you would go to get accurate information on what's currently going on in Israel?
That's a good question. Like, what sites would you do? Watch the news. Mm-hmm. Don't watch it too much, though, because you can get obsessed with the news, right? So watch the news. I would encourage you, maybe watch a couple different sources, because there's always skewing. Both conservatives and liberals tend to skew the stuff, okay? So watch it, and then just to find out what's happening in Israel. But as far as the Bible, you know why a lot of stuff is on the internet?
Because it's all
because they can't sell it. You know, it's just, so I would do more scholarly research, read books that maybe, you know, but, you know, with brand new stuff, you know, what are some books? You know, those are legitimate questions, and nobody's perfect. So reading a few different positions, you know, there's, trying to think of different specific sources, different authors. I like George Ellen Ladd. He's a dead guy, though. Some of these sensationalized guys that go into too much detail, I'd be careful with them. You could read my book, The Uniqueness of the Bible. That's a really good book. I do talk about Israel a lot, and it gives you a really good understanding of the Jewish people, the first half of the book. Right now, I don't have any really good sources. Like I love a lot of pastors, and I just heard a presentation from Mike Bickle, which I really like Mike Bickle, but he got really off on some of the extreme stuff. I'm saying, oh, you're reading way too much into this. I like, who's the guy over the, in fact, I think I wrote his, I like Michael Brown. In fact, yeah, that'd be my favorite one to look to. Michael Brown, okay? So that would be one to look to, absolutely. Greg Laurie, he used the Gog and Magog thing. I was really surprised because he's usually a pretty good scholar. So I was kind of dumbfounded that he said, this could be Gog and Magog. I was like, Greg, you know better than that. This cannot be Gog and Magog. Well, anyway, that's my thought. So, yeah, Mike Brown, I'm glad you said that. Okay, go ahead.
I had a friend recently asked me if the Gaza Strip has any geographical, biblical significance, and she was saying from Revelation, and I answered saying, I think you're thinking of Megiddo to have geographical significance. Is there any significance geographically for Gaza?
Used to live.
I'm sorry?
That's where the Philistines used to live.
Okay.
So the Philistines were there in that old, and the Philistines were always the arch enemy of Israel. So, you know, it still is. So, I mean, you could make that comparison, I suppose. But no, the Bible doesn't talk about that. But it's a really small area, by the way. Yeah. Good. But you're right. The Valley of Megiddo, where Armageddon is going to take place, that's huge. Okay? Yeah, that's in the Samaria area. Okay, yes.
My question is that with pre-trib, they always seem to bring up the Feast of Trumpets. Where do I find that in Scripture? And how does that actually truly play out?
It's a good question. I'd rather not get into the differences between pre-trib and post-tribulation rapture simply because we agree on almost everything except when the tribulation happens. I mean, when the rapture happens. You know, so I hope they're actually right. You know, be kind of nice to go up, avoid everything, you know. But, you know, so I'd rather not get into you can read Ladd's book, excellent book on the post-tribulation presentation. But, you know, they each have some arguments that they use. And so pray for pre, prepare for post. Okay, that's what I would recommend. Don't be caught off guard just in case you're wrong. Okay, I think I have a paper. Do I have a paper on it? I think I have a paper on it on our website if you're interested. Yeah.
Keep going and finish what you were
I'm done.
Well, it's not really a question, but to the fear thing that you have, if we keep adding the negative thoughts and the negative aspects and like the vibes to this Israel thing, it's just going to add more fear and more power to that other side. If we just continue walking with pride and with faith and with love, we can, in the end, we can actually help move that part of Israel into the light and out of the tribulation that they're going through. If we just continue with a heartfelt prayer and our faith, if we keep bringing in negative comments and negative things, it's just going to bring it back into the lower part.
And one of the things that you brought up that I think is especially important is the love part. Jesus called us to love our enemies. That would even include Hamas, wouldn't it? Yeah. So we have to be careful. It's okay to speak out against injustice, isn't it? So speak out against injustice. At the same time, love everybody. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. That's love your enemies, boy. That's a tough one, isn't it? Loving your enemies. That's our part. Now, Jews, I can't blame them. They're not believers yet. Okay. They haven't been grafted back in yet. So we're looking forward to that day. Go ahead.
You mentioned, am I close enough?
Probably. You can lift it up if you want.
You mentioned Israel having the best intelligence.
Maybe I'm wrong, but okay, yeah.
So how did this sneak attack happen?
Good question, yeah. Apparently they were caught off guard too.
The other question I have is when Israel goes in, like now and on the ground attack even, and they want to spare innocent citizens, obviously, but how is that ever even going to be possible?
Well, it's a good question. If you're asking me from a strategical question, you know, what's right and wrong, you know, that would be a second question. But strategically, how do you do that? Well, one thing I do know is that they're not purposely trying to kill the innocent people, whereas Hamas was actually purposely trying to kill the innocent people. And they still are by using their own people as human shields. How does the Jews go in? They're simply trying to protect themselves. They got attacked. Now they know if they don't do anything, they're just going to attack again until they stop them. It's like a bully. You just got to stop them. How do they do it? Well, they're thinking the best way is this ground attack. Is that the best? How would I know? I'm not a military strategist. Is it going to work? I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. So it's good questions. Don't have the answer.
You know the role of the Israeli settlements within Gaza and the West Bank and all that, what that has to play on all this?
The kibbutzes and the settlements, the Israelites, the Jewish people, the Israelis is what they call themselves today, they believe that the whole land is theirs. We have this idea of Palestine and Israel, and that's something the Palestinians made up. If you look at who went in and took over, Israel went in and took the whole land, okay? Then they got attacked, and so then they said fine, and then they had the Six-Day War, and then they had the Second War, and they took over everything. They actually gave some land back. I don't even know why they did that, because that just invited trouble. But the land itself, the question is, how long do you have to be in a land before you get to call it yours? Because if you really look for the length, well, it used to be their land before they got kicked out by the Romans. So if we're going to go really, really long, well, the Palestinians just need to give the land back to them. If we're going to go, or if we're just going to go less than that, it was ran by Christians before the Muslims took over. So you say, well, because the Muslims came in and through the sword took it from the Christians, the area that some call Palestine, the Jewish area there. So how far back do you go? You know, how do you like? Well, the Jews won the war. It's their land right now. You know, we can say they should give it back. Should we give back the land that we took from the Native Americans? You know, see, these are all the same kind of question, aren't they? You know, so what's the answer? Well, I don't know. I mean, they're in there now, and they're trying to protect themselves. They let the Palestinians stay, and they tried to work out some kind of two-state thing, but I don't think any of them wanted the two-state thing, Jews or the Palestinians. They all want to just own all of it. Who gets it? Well, I do know God gave that land to the Jewish people. I do know they're going to be in that land at the end of time. And in fact, the Battle of Armageddon is the last battle. And by the way, that means the Jews are going to be there for the last battle, right? So that means we know they're not going to get annihilated by the Hamas or anybody else, because there they are, and the Bible is always correct. But, what's fair and this and that? Good question.
I'm going to leave it after this one.
Okay.
So you mentioned the 144,000.
Yeah.
They end up being more like evangelists to the whole earth, do they
Seems
not?
like it, yeah.
Not just to fellow Jews, but
Sure.
Gentiles, and so pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So when they get saved. So we got to get them saved. Yeah. Question?
You said pray for rapture before the 7-year tribulation, but prepare for 7 years.
Sure. I didn't make that up. Somebody else did.
No.
But yeah.
Well, okay. That's the. Aside from sharing Christ with as many people as possible and praying and walking with Jesus, what other ways to prepare are you thinking
Okay,
about?
good.
Like a water filter?
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, seriously.
I hear you.
I'm wondering.
Let me share. Okay. There's a passage, interestingly, in Jeremiah that I think is helpful. Jeremiah, he told, by the inspiration of God, he told the Jewish people when they were going to get exiled to Babylon, he said, when you go to Babylon, make roots. You're going to be there for a while. So pray for the peace of your city. Dig in, raise your families, do normal activities. Don't let this stop you from your normal activities. Keep raising your families. Don't be in fear. However, be smart. At any time, it's probably not a bad idea to have a little extra water on some extra food, but you don't have to buy a bunker and have a bunch of guns. I kind of don't see God saying, I want you to get a bunch of guns and shoot everybody. If you got a bunch of food, share it. Isn't that what we do as Christians? We share it. So you can plan some of these things. Get a generator. That's not a bad idea unless you're borrowing money to get it. That's really dumb. So borrowing money is very, very bad. Don't use credit cards. Okay. Unless you're paying them off at the end of the month, every month, etc. So prepare in the sense of spiritually, be ready. That's the whole point of Matthew 24. Be ready if he's coming back at any time. Be ready. Don't get caught off guard ignoring God in your life. That was the bizarre thing that happened with first 9/11 and then COVID. With 9/11, I expected people to get on fire for God again. And then when COVID hit, when's the last time we've had a plague that literally shut down the whole world? That kind of sounds like a birth pain in Matthew 24 to me. So why wouldn't we go, wow, we better be prepared? But it actually caused people to just go and stay away from church even. The Bible says, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as so much as some do, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. So we're supposed to be gathering even more as we see the day approaching. And so those are ways I think could help us to be prepared spiritually. Okay, yeah.
Hey, so what do you think about the synagogue of Satan and how Jesus talked about the Jews who proclaim to be Jews but are not and are really a synagogue of Satan?
Yeah, that was back in when John wrote the book of Revelation around 95 AD. The chapter 2 and chapter 3 are letters specifically to churches during that time period. And those churches, some of them, the Jews at that time were persecuting the Christians. They really were. In fact, they got the Romans to see that those Christians aren't actually a Jewish sect. Under Judaism, they had some peace. They had some, because the Roman Empire had some deals with Judaism as an official religion. But once they were seen as not a part of Judaism, Romans started persecuting them. So they were actually persecuting them then, which was terrible, what the Jews of that time were doing. Now, chapter 4 and 5 is a vision of up in heaven, and then chapter 6 on is about the end times. So that wasn't talking about now, that the Jews today are a synagogue of Satan or anything like that. They're just unbelievers waiting to get grafted back into the olive tree at the very end. So we see them as a part of this, if I'm correct, that God has this promise to Abraham, a physical promise and a spiritual promise. They're a part of the physical promise and eventually will be a part of the spiritual promise. So today, I don't think we should see them as a synagogue of Satan or anything like that. But they were, back then, they really did persecute. And anytime anybody persecutes the church, that's bad. Right?
So have you ever read the Talmud, ever?
It's a very, very long book. I've read a lot of it, yes, but not the whole thing.
So by definition, they consider all Gentiles as livestock, and it says that we were created to serve them.
Yeah.
In the Talmud. So this is what they believe. So I really think we should not be painting them as innocent victims and like they're like the good guys and everything. I'm not saying Hamas is good. They're bad too. They're all evil.
I hear what you're saying. And as I said, the Jewish people as a whole, it's not that they're really good. It's not that they haven't done anything bad or whatever. However, the Talmud was written around 500 AD. It was how the Jews understood things during the Middle Ages. The Jews today, the vast majority of Jews are very, very liberal. They don't believe their own book. And they don't believe that. They've rejected their Talmud as well. They just embrace the customs and so forth. Now, I haven't met, and I've talked with a lot of Jewish people, I haven't met any Jew that believes what you just described. Yeah. So if somebody did, that'd be bad. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. One more. Here we go.
So about those letters, the 7 letters to the church, I find it slightly odd how John addressed them to the angels of the church.
Yeah.
But I was reading it and I was kind of curious. A couple of the letters stuck out at different points in my life and how I've gone through it. And I was wondering how, I assume more than one of them can be associated to you, but at the end of it, the prize of reading it was the reward of what you get for following it. That was kind of the little prize in the cereal box after finishing it. But I was wondering if you could be rewarded with more than one of these letters rewarding. And then another question I had was, why is the 7 brought up so much in Revelations? Like the 7 letters, 7 trumpets, angels, 7 voices of thunder. Like I don't know if that's just, I assume there's something with it a little more.
They meant something,
but
yeah.
I hadn't quite made it to that.
Well, with the 7 letters, those are 7 churches during that time period, but they do represent all kinds of different churches at any given time in the history of the church. And so we can certainly apply the principles. Whatever we see, hey, don't be like that, be like that. And these are promises to everybody, to all believers. So I think you can get more than one blessing from it. The number 7 it typically represents completion. And so it uses 7 a lot to say that this is the complete plan of God. And so, yeah. Yep, 7 days, 7th day he rested. So 7's kind of big on God's calendar. Got these seven years of tribulation coming up that hopefully we don't have to go through, but be prepared just in case. All right, we better pack it up. There is some leftover pizza, so please come and get more pizza. And let me pray, okay? Father, we confess that we still don't know everything, and we would like to know as much as possible. I think of that time where there was the 7 that John heard 7 thunders, and that you told him, seal it up. We don't get to know everything. And you know us, we're curious creatures. We don't know everything. So please show us as much as we possibly can, but also help us to be satisfied with what you have shown us and to be prepared, especially spiritually. We ask for peace in Jerusalem. Please, Lord, help them. Help the Hamas to repent. That would be the best thing, that they would truly repent, leave the area, and there would be no more bloodshed on either side. But please, Lord, help them and help us as we go to not be afraid, but to be bold for Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, God bless you. Pizza.